The dust rose like angry spirits as stones struck the earth around her feet, each impact echoing like drums of judgment. Amara knelt in the village square, her thin arms wrapped protectively around her knees, while voices screamed accusations from every direction. "Witch!" someone shouted with venom. "She has cursed the rich man's son," cried another, spitting toward her. The girl's torn dress clung to her trembling body, but her eyes remained steady, fixed on something distant only she could see. Blood trickled from a cut above her eyebrow, where a stone had found its mark moments before. The elders sat in their carved chairs beneath the ancient pavilion, their faces hard as iron, unmoved by her youth. How had it come to this? How had a barefoot orphan who owned nothing but shame become dangerous enough to drag before judgment? As the crowd pressed closer, hungry for punishment and spectacle, Amara whispered words her mother once sang, a prayer older than memory itself. The wind shifted suddenly. Somewhere in that mob stood the billionaire whose son she had dared to teach, whose comfortable world she had unknowingly threatened. But to understand why knowledge in the hands of the poor terrifies the powerful, we must return to where her story truly began. Amara was born beside the Osun River on a night when lightning split the sky without rain, illuminating the world in brief, violent flashes. Her mother, Folashade, had stumbled to the river bank alone, abandoned by the man who promised her forever, her mind already beginning to crack under the weight of betrayal and heartbreak. The baby arrived with the sound of rushing water, as if the river itself delivered her into a world that did not want her presence. Folashade had once been beautiful and clever, a woman whose laughter could brighten market days, and whose intelligence had attracted many suitors. But shame has teeth that bite deep and never let go. When the wealthy man who fathered her child denied her publicly, something precious broke inside Folashade's mind like glass shattering. By the time Amara could walk on unsteady legs, her mother talked to shadows and sang songs that made no sense to anyone. They lived under borrowed shelter, ate scraps from kind strangers, and wore clothes held together by prayers and hope. Amara learned early that hunger hurts less than pity from strangers' eyes. She learned that people look through the poor as if they are made of air. Most painfully, she learned that madness makes others cruel without mercy. By age 7, Amara was selling water in clay pots, balancing them on her small head through dusty streets under the merciless sun. Her bare feet knew every stone, every thorn in the paths between the river and the market where people gathered daily. Each day she earned just enough to buy gari and sometimes a piece of dried fish for their evening meal. The other children laughed at her patched clothes and whispered when her mother wandered past, speaking to people who were not there. But Amara noticed things others missed in their comfortable blindness. She saw which paths the school children took each morning, heard fragments of lessons floating through open windows like gifts. While selling water near the school fence, she memorized words written on the chalkboard inside the bright classroom. At night, by the light of other people's lamps and cooking fires, she traced letters in the sand with a stick. Her finger became her pencil, the earth became her page, and the moon her teacher. No teacher taught her to read, yet somehow the symbols began making sense in her hungry mind. Her mother, in rare moments of clarity, would watch with tears in her eyes and whisper softly, "You have your father's mind." Then the madness would return, swallowing the moment whole again. One evening, as Amara washed her mother's face with cool river water, Folashade suddenly gripped her daughter's wrist with unexpected strength. Her eyes cleared like clouds parting after rain, sharp and focused in a way they rarely were. "Listen carefully," she said, her voice sharp and urgent, cutting through the usual fog. "You carry something precious inside your head, child. Something borrowed from those before us, from the ancestors. The ancestors chose you for reasons we may never understand." Amara froze, afraid to breathe and break the spell of her mother's clarity. Her mother continued, words tumbling out rapidly. "But remember this, the powerful fear what they cannot control or predict. Knowledge in the wrong hands makes them tremble at night. They will try to crush you before you can rise." Then, as quickly as clarity came, it vanished like morning dew. Folashade's eyes went distant again, and she began humming a broken tune from her childhood. Amara held her mother close, feeling the fragile body shake against her own thin frame. That night, she lay awake wondering what her mother meant by those strange words. What could a poor girl like her possibly possess that anyone would fear? The question followed her into restless sleep, unanswered but persistent, haunting her dreams. The school stood at the forest edge, a concrete building with blue-painted walls and windows that glowed with afternoon light like promises. Amara had passed it countless times, always slowing her steps to listen to the voices within. One day, curiosity defeated caution and fear. She crept to a window and stood on her toes, watching a teacher draw numbers on the board and explain how they worked together in harmony. Her heart raced with excitement and longing. The lesson made perfect sense to her eager mind. When the teacher noticed her shadow and rushed outside shouting angrily, Amara ran, shame burning her cheeks like fire. "Beggar girl, this place is not for your kind," the woman yelled after her retreating form. Amara hid behind the iroko tree until her breathing steadied and her tears dried. But the next day she returned to that same window, and the day after that. She learned to stand where shadows hid her, to become invisible while her mind drank in everything offered. Mathematics, stories, history, science, all of it poured into her hungry understanding like water into parched earth. Knowledge became her secret treasure, more valuable than gold because no one could steal what lived inside her head, hidden and safe from the world's cruelty. Under the iroko tree's spreading branches, where shade offered relief from the punishing sun, Amara first met the boy who would change everything in her difficult life. Damilola sat alone beneath the ancient trunk, his expensive uniform wrinkled, his school bag thrown carelessly aside in frustration. Tears streaked his round face, making tracks through the dust. She recognized him from the village. Everyone knew Chief Adekule's only son, the heir to unimaginable wealth. But the powerful boy looked small and defeated now, staring at a textbook with hatred in his young eyes. Amara should have walked past without a word. Rich and poor do not mix in this world. But something in his misery called to her own suffering and loneliness. "The numbers confuse you?" she asked softly, carefully. Damilola jerked up, startled and defensive, his face hardening. "What do you know about it? You are just a water seller." His voice cracked with shame and anger mixed together. Amara almost left, pride stinging her heart. Instead, she sat nearby and drew numbers in the dirt with her stick. "Sometimes they make more sense when you see them like this," she said simply, showing him a different way to think about the problem that frustrated him. Damilola watched, suspicious at first, then curious despite himself. Understanding flickered in his eyes like a candle catching flame. "How did you know that?" Damilola demanded, staring at the dirt where Amara had made mathematics visible and simple with her careful drawings. She shrugged, suddenly self-conscious under his intense gaze. "I listen carefully. I practice every day. I try until things make sense to me." The boy looked at her differently now, not with pity or disgust, but with something like respect and wonder. "My tutors have been teaching me for months and I still did not understand these concepts. You explained it in minutes." A strange silence hung between them, the silence of walls beginning to crack and crumble. Damilola reached into his bag and pulled out a mango wrapped in paper, still fresh. "Are you hungry?" he asked quietly. Amara's stomach answered before her pride could refuse the offering. As she ate gratefully, they talked cautiously, like animals learning to trust after being hurt. He told her about his father's impossible expectations, how teachers sighed when he entered the room, how his cousins called him slow and stupid. She told him about lessons stolen from windows and words learned from moonlight and determination. Before they parted, Damilola asked hopefully, "Will you come tomorrow? Will you teach me again?" Amara nodded, knowing she was stepping into something dangerous and necessary. A friendship began that would shake their world's foundations and challenge everything people believed about their places. The meetings under the iroko tree became sacred to both of them, a ritual neither would break. Each afternoon, after Amara finished selling water and Damilola escaped from his tutor's disappointed eyes and heavy sighs, they gathered where shade and secrecy protected them from judgmental stares. She taught him everything she had taught herself: mathematics, reading comprehension, problem solving, but more importantly, she taught him patience with his own mind and abilities. "Understanding does not mean being fast," she explained gently. "It means being thorough and careful with your thinking." Damilola bloomed under her attention like a plant finally receiving water after drought. His questions grew bolder and more confident. His confidence strengthened visibly. At home, his expensive tutors noticed the dramatic change. Suddenly, the boy who could not grasp simple concepts was solving problems independently and with ease. His handwriting improved dramatically. His memory sharpened like a blade being honed. "What has happened to you?" they asked suspiciously, searching his face for answers. Damilola only smiled and said he was trying harder now. But trying harder does not transform a student overnight into someone different. The tutors whispered among themselves, their professional pride wounded. Chief Adekule heard the whispers and grew curious about this sudden transformation. Meanwhile, in the village, others noticed Damilola's changing path, including those whose envy ran deeper than the river itself. Tunde, Damilola's older cousin, had always enjoyed being the clever one in the family. The one adults praised, his teachers praised him constantly, adults patted his head and predicted greatness for his future. But lately, attention had shifted to Damilola, the boy everyone once pitied and dismissed. Tunde's jealousy festered like an infected wound, growing darker each day. One afternoon, he followed his younger cousin through the village paths, staying hidden behind walls and trees like his shadow. When he saw Damilola sitting with a ragged girl under the iroko tree and watched her teaching patiently and Damilola learning with joy on his face, rage filled his chest like poison. Instead of seeing kindness, he saw threat to his position. Instead of seeing teaching, he saw manipulation and dark intentions. That evening, Tunde went to the elders with a twisted version of the truth, his words carefully chosen.
A strange girl has bewitched Damilola, he told them, his voice dripping with false concern and fear. She whispers to him in secret places. Since meeting her, he has changed completely. You know what this means in our traditions. The elders exchanged dark looks, their faces grave. In a world where the poor are always suspected and the different are always dangerous, Tunde's lies found fertile ground. Seeds of fear were planted deep, and fear grows faster than truth ever can in human hearts. The rumors spread like fire through dry grass, consuming everything in their path. Market women clutched their children closer when Amara passed, pulling them away protectively. Mothers warned their sons and daughters to avoid the water seller girl who practiced dark arts and unholy magic. She has stolen the rich boy's mind, they whispered behind their hands. Who knows what she wants from him? Stones began appearing in Amara's path, deliberately. Someone spat at her feet with disgust. Another accidentally knocked over her water pots, spilling her day's earnings into the dirt and dust. Amara's mother, lost in her own broken world, could not protect her daughter. The girl had only her dignity and her certainty that she had done nothing wrong to sustain her. Still, she met Damilola at the iroko tree faithfully. Still, she taught him with patience and care, refusing to let cruelty win. They are saying terrible things about you because of me, Damilola said one afternoon, guilt heavy in his young voice. Maybe we should stop meeting. Maybe it is too dangerous now. Amara looked at him steadily with clear eyes. If we stop, they win this battle. If we stop, you go back to believing you are not smart. Which is worse, their words or your future? Damilola had no answer to her wisdom. They continued meeting, but now shadows seemed to watch them constantly, and the air felt heavy with coming storms that would break everything apart. The day Damilola stood before his class and solved a complex problem on the chalkboard, the room fell silent with shock. His teacher blinked in disbelief, mouth hanging open. His classmates stared with wide eyes. Even Tunde's confident smirk faltered and died. Excellent work, the teacher said slowly, searching Damilola's face for signs of cheating or trickery. How did you arrive at this solution? Explain your thinking. Damilola explained his thinking clearly, using methods his expensive tutors had never taught him before. That evening, when Chief Adekunle heard the news from the excited teacher, he did not celebrate his son's success. Instead, suspicion creased his wealthy face like crumpled paper. Who has been helping you? He demanded harshly. Tell me the truth right now. Damilola's throat went dry as sand. If he revealed Amara's identity, his father's pride might crush her like an insect beneath his shoe. If he lied, he betrayed the only person who believed in him truly. Fear made the decision for the boy. No one, father. I finally started understanding on my own. The chief's eyes narrowed dangerously. He knew his son was lying, could see it in the way the boy's gaze dropped to the floor. Find out who is influencing my son, he ordered his servants coldly that night. I will know the truth before this moon changes its face. That same night, Amara's mother wandered away from their shelter and did not return by morning. Amara searched the riverbank until her feet bled and her voice cracked from calling her mother's name desperately. Folashade had vanished like morning mist under the sun, leaving only footprints leading to the water's edge. The villagers offered no help or sympathy. Some said the mad woman had finally walked into the river to end her suffering and misery. Others claimed she had been taken by spirits tired of her broken songs and madness. Amara knew her mother better than anyone, fragile but not suicidal, lost but not careless with life. Someone had driven her away, or worse, harmed her. Grief tried to drown her in waves, but she forced herself to keep moving forward, keep selling water, keep searching. Her eyes grew hollow with worry and sleeplessness. Her body weakened from not eating. Yet, when afternoon came each day, she still walked to the Iroko tree because abandoning Damilola now would mean her mother's disappearance had defeated her spirit. The boy waited anxiously, having heard rumors of the missing woman throughout the village. "We can't stop if you need to," he offered gently. Amara shook her head firmly. "My mother once told me, knowledge is the only thing no one can steal from us. Teaching you keeps her wisdom alive." But even as she spoke bravely, she felt the net tightening around her, felt powerful forces moving in the shadows, plotting against her survival. Hunger gnawed at Amara's stomach as she taught Damilola about reading comprehension, her voice steady despite the weakness in her limbs. Without her mother to share meals with, she ate even less, saving what little she had in case Folashade returned hungry. The village children threw stones now when she carried her water pots through the streets. "Witch, crazy woman's daughter," they chanted loudly. Sleep became impossible at night. Every night she walked the paths searching, calling softly into the darkness. The cruel whispers followed her everywhere like persistent flies. Perhaps the mad woman's disappearance was punishment for the daughter's unnatural pride and ambition. How dare a beggar girl presume to teach? How dare she reach beyond her station? Yet Amara refused to bend her back. Teaching Damilola had become more than kindness. It was resistance against a world that wanted her to accept powerlessness as her destiny forever. One afternoon, as she helped him understand a difficult passage, a shadow fell across them both. Amara looked up to see 3 men standing there with hard faces, servants of the chief, their faces hard and purposeful. "The girl comes with us now," the tallest one announced without emotion. "Chief Adekule demands answers from her." Damilola jumped to his feet protectively, but he was only a boy, and they were grown men with orders to carry out no matter what he said. They dragged Anara through the village like a criminal caught in terrible crime, her wrists bound with rough rope that bit into her skin painfully. People emerged from their homes to watch, their faces a mix of fear, satisfaction, and curiosity about what would happen. The village square filled quickly with spectators. Amara was thrown to her knees before the assembled elders, 7 old men whose word was law in this place. The eldest, Babatunde, leaned forward in his carved chair, his voice cold like river water in winter. "You stand accused of witchcraft and manipulation of an innocent boy. You have bewitched Chief Adekule's son, filling his head with your darkness and evil. What do you say to defend yourself?" Amara's voice came out stronger than she felt inside. "I taught him honestly. That is not witchcraft. That is kindness and nothing more." A elder laughed harshly, mockingly. "Kindness? A beggar girl teaching the son of our richest man? You reached beyond your place in this world. You wanted to trap him, to use him for your gain and advancement." Amara's eyes blazed with anger. "I wanted nothing but to help a struggling boy learn what teachers could not teach him before. Is that now a crime in this village?" The crowd murmured among themselves. Some voices agreed with the elders. Others, quieter, wondered if the girl spoke truth. Then the sound everyone had been waiting for arrived. The rumble of an expensive vehicle, the whisper of power approaching. Chief Adekunle had come to deliver judgment. The crowd parted like water before a stone as Chief Adekunle emerged from his black vehicle, stepping down with authority. He was a tall man with iron grey hair and eyes that had forgotten how to soften over years of power. Wealth draped him in fine cloth and gold that glittered, but it was his presence that commanded fear, the absolute certainty that his word could end lives or save them instantly. He walked slowly to the pavilion, his gaze sweeping over the scene before settling on the kneeling girl in the dust. Amara met his eyes without flinching, though her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. So this is the witch, this child who has supposedly corrupted my son's mind with her evil. He circled her slowly, examining her torn clothes, her bare feet, the defiant tilt of her chin despite everything. You do not look dangerous at all. You look like you are starving to death. Amara said nothing in response. Sometimes silence is the bravest response to power. Chief Adekunle turned to the elders assembled. What punishment have you decided for this girl? Babatunde spoke quickly, eagerly. Exile, chief. Send her far from here where she can harm no more children. The chief nodded slowly, then surprised everyone gathered. First, she will prove herself before all us. Tomorrow, she teaches my son before all of you. If she fails, she disappears forever from this land. That night, locked in a storage room behind the chief's compound, Amara prayed to ancestors she had never known by name. Her body ached from hunger and rough handling throughout the day, but her mind raced with plans and possibilities. She understood the trap perfectly. If she taught well, she proved she was unusually gifted, which would make the villagers' fear deepen into something worse. If she taught poorly, she would be exiled or worse, and Damilola would lose his confidence forever and return to shame. There was no winning, only choosing which way to lose and suffer. Yet, she had not survived this long by accepting defeat easily. When morning came with its harsh light, servants pulled her into the sunlight roughly. The entire village had gathered, hungry for spectacle and judgment. Damilola stood near his father, his face pale with worry for her. Their eyes met briefly, and she tried to send him courage through that glance across the space. The chief gestured impatiently with his hand. Begin now.
Show us this teaching that has transformed my son so dramatically. Amara's throat was dry as desert sand, but her voice emerged clear and steady. She asked for a chalkboard and chalk. When they brought it reluctantly, she began not with tricks or performance, but with genuine teaching from her heart. She asked Damilola questions that built on what he knew, guided him gently toward answers, celebrated his thinking openly. Within minutes, the crowd forgot to jeer and mock. They were watching real learning happen before their eyes. Damilola's face lit with understanding as Amara explained a concept that had confused him for weeks of frustrated trying. His answers came confidently now, his reasoning clear and logical, flowing like water. The crowd watched in stunned silence as the boy they had known as slow demonstrated real intelligence and capability. Even the tutors who had failed him looked uncomfortable, their professional pride wounded by this barefoot girl's success. The chief stood rigid as stone, his expression unreadable behind his powerful mask. Amara taught for nearly an hour, covering mathematics, reading, and problem-solving with patience. Every moment revealed not manipulation, but genuine skill and patience beyond her years. When she finally finished her demonstration, Damilola turned to his father with shining eyes full of hope. You see, father, she has taught me to think clearly, not to fear learning anymore. The elders shifted in their seats uncomfortably. Babatunde's face darkened with frustration. The girl was supposed to fail dramatically to prove herself worthy of punishment. Instead, she had demonstrated something uncomfortable for everyone, that wisdom and teaching ability lived in the most unlikely places imaginable. The chief remained silent, his jaw tight with tension. Then Elder Kunle, who had watched everything with narrowed eyes from the beginning, stood slowly and deliberately. Before we judge, there is something the chief must know, something about this girl's mother and her past. A terrible tension filled the air instantly. Amara's heart stopped beating. She suddenly knew that whatever came next would change everything forever and could not be undone. Elder Kunle's voice carried across the silent square like thunder. 20 years ago, Chief Adekunle courted a beautiful woman named Folashade. She was clever and proud, and they were lovers who promised each other forever. She became pregnant with his child. The chief's face went grey as stone, draining of color. Kunle continued mercilessly, his words cutting. But you were already promised to another, a woman from a wealthy family with connections and land. When Folashade told you about the child growing inside her, you denied her publicly, called her a liar and worse, paid men to chase her from your sight forever. She fled to the river and gave birth alone in suffering. The shame broke her mind completely. Amara felt the earth tilt beneath her knees, the world spinning. Gasps rippled through the crowd like waves. Damilola stared at his father in horror and disbelief. That child, Kunle finished, pointing at Amara with a steady finger, is yours by blood. The mad woman you all mock is the brilliant woman this man destroyed. The beggar girl who teaches your son is his own daughter, abandoned and forgotten. The chief staggered as if struck by a physical blow. His eyes found Amara's face, really seeing her for the first time, the shape of his own mother in her cheekbones, the intelligence he once loved in Folashade blazing in those steady, unforgiving eyes. Denial rose to his lips but died there unspoken. Truth has a weight that cannot be argued away with money. His abandoned daughter had been kneeling in the dust before him, and he had called her a witch without knowing. The silence stretched like a wound too deep to bleed, filling every space. Chief Adekunle's carefully built world cracked open, exposing the rot beneath his wealth and power like maggots under a stone. He had built an empire on the ruins of a woman's sanity, prospered while his own child starved in rags, and called her dangerous when she dared to be extraordinary. The crowd watched him, waiting for his response. Amara remained kneeling, her face unreadable like carved wood. 20 years of unanswered questions suddenly made terrible sense. Her mother's broken mind, the hints about her father's intelligence, the way knowledge came easily to her despite having no teachers or books. She carried the blood of a man who chose reputation over love, power over responsibility, comfort over courage. Shame should have destroyed her spirit. Instead, rage kept her spine straight and unbending. "My mother," she began, her voice shaking with emotion. "Where is my mother now?" The chief could not answer immediately. He had never asked, never cared where the mad woman wandered. Damilola's voice broke the tension like shattering glass. "Father, is this true? Did you do this terrible thing?" The boy's face showed betrayal deeper than any lesson could heal or repair. Chief Adekunle's mouth walked soundlessly like a fish gasping. For the first time in decades, the powerful man faced something his money could not fix or his position could not intimidate or silence. The truth stood before him in rags, asking for the one thing he had never given anyone: accountability and justice. Chief Adekunle's knees bent, slowly, impossibly, the movement shocking everyone. The crowd gasped as the proudest man in the village lowered himself into the dust beside his daughter he had abandoned without thought. His expensive clothes gathered dirt and filth. His gold jewelry seemed suddenly obscene against his humbled posture. When he spoke, his voice cracked like old wood splitting under pressure. "I cannot undo what I have done to you and your mother. I cannot return 20 years or restore your mother's mind or give you back the childhood you deserved." Tears streaked his weathered face, tears the village had never seen from him. "I chose comfort over courage and responsibility. I chose reputation over responsibility and love. I called you a witch when you were only brilliant, dangerous when you were only kind to my son." He reached out, not to grab, but to offer his hand in humility. "I do not ask forgiveness from you. I do not deserve it, not now or ever. But I will spend whatever time remains making this right, correcting my terrible sins." Amara stared at the hand extended to her, this hand that had signed papers enriching himself while she starved on scraps, this hand that had waved her mother away into madness and poverty. Every instinct screamed to refuse, to let him drown in his shame and guilt. But she thought of Damilola, of lessons under the Iroko tree, of how transformation begins with the smallest bridge between two hearts. Slowly, she placed her small hand in his large one. "Find my mother first," she whispered firmly. "Then we talk about making things right and true." Before anyone could move or speak, Tunde pushed through the crowd violently, his face twisted with desperate fury and disbelief. "This is deception and lies," he shouted, his voice cracking. "She has manipulated you all with lies and tricks and witchcraft. The mad woman is not the chief's former lover. That is just a story she planted with Elder Kunle." His voice grew shrill as he felt his carefully built advantage crumbling beneath him. "She is a witch who has cursed this family, and now she turns father against son, past against present. Can you not see what is happening?" But the crowd had seen enough truth. They had watched Amara teach with patience and skill, seeing the chief's recognition and genuine remorse clearly, remembered Elder Kunle's testimony, which matched old rumors. Tunde's envy had poisoned their judgment, but truth was washing the poison away like rain. Baba Tunde stood with effort, his aged voice cutting through his grandson's hysteria sharply. "Enough, Tunde. Your envy has shamed this council and our family. You saw a boy being helped and called it corruption and evil. You saw intelligence and called it witchcraft. You saw your own position threatened and tried to destroy an innocent child without mercy." The old man's eyes filled with disappointment. "Amara may be poor in money, but you are poverty itself. Poor in spirit, poor in honor, poor in humanity and compassion." The crowd murmured agreement loudly. Tunde looked around wildly, seeing only condemnation in faces that once praised him. He had gambled everything on Amara's destruction and lost completely. The village's judgment was turning, and this time he stood directly in its path. Chief Adekunle rose to his feet with dignity, pulling Amara up with him gently as an equal. His voice rang with authority restored, not by force, but by honest confession and humility. "My daughter has been wronged by me and by this village for too long, but I will not let another moment pass in which she suffers from my mistakes." He pointed at Tunde with finality. "You spread lies and fear because goodness threatened your small pride and position. You are exiled from this place. Leave before sunset and do not return to this land." Tunde opened his mouth loudly to protest, but his own grandfather's glares silenced him instantly. The chief continued with growing strength. "I am sending men to find Folashade immediately. She will receive the best healers, the best care available. Whatever can be restored will be restored with patience." He turned to the elders assembled. "And I am building a school, a real school, where any child, rich or poor, can learn without shame. Amara will help design it and guide its purpose." The crowd erupted in whispers and gasps. This was unprecedented. A billionaire humbling himself publicly. A beggar girl elevated to importance. The social order inverted by truth's earthquake. Amara stood in the center of it all, still processing that the man beside her was her father, that her mother might be found alive, that the future was suddenly, impossibly different from yesterday. Damilola approached cautiously, hope in his eyes. "Are you my sister?" he asked quietly, testing the word. Amara looked at the boy she had taught, who was now her brother by blood. "I suppose I am," she whispered, and despite everything that had happened, they both smiled genuinely. They found Folasade 3 days later, huddled in a fisherman's abandoned hut downstream, alive but barely conscious and fevered. Chief Adekunle carried her himself to his compound, tears streaming unchecked down his face. The best doctors came from the city, bringing medicines and patience and gentle care. Amara sat by her mother's bedside day and night, without leaving, holding the fragile hand that had raised her in poverty, singing the broken songs back to their rightful owner. Slowly, painfully, Folasade began returning from the fog that had claimed her mind for years. Her eyes cleared more often throughout the day. Her words made sense for longer stretches of time. When she finally recognized Amara fully and learned what had happened in the village, she wept, not from sorrow but from relief that her daughter had survived and triumphed where she had failed. The chief visited daily without fail, never demanding forgiveness, only offering service and presence. He sat with them in humble silence, this man who once denied them both.
Amara watched her parents together, broken people trying to mend what pride and fear had shattered years ago. Meanwhile, the village transformed around them like a garden after rain. The chief kept his word faithfully. Plans for the school moved forward with energy. Children who had thrown stones at Amara now watched her with cautious respect and curiosity. Not everyone accepted the changes gladly or gracefully, but power had shifted fundamentally, and the world was learning to adjust to new realities no one had imagined possible before. 6 months passed like water flowing. The school rose on land donated by the chief, its walls bright with painted learning and hope for every child. Every child in the village now attended classes, regardless of their family's wealth or status. Amara walked its halls not as a teacher yet. She was still learning herself from proper instructors, but as a symbol of what those halls represented to everyone. Damilola studied beside children who once mocked him cruelly, all of them discovering that struggle and triumph belonged to everyone equally. Folasade's mind continued healing slowly. She would never be fully whole. Some wounds cut too deep to vanish. But she smiled now with genuine warmth, spoke clearly most days, helped her daughter prepare lessons and materials. The chief had asked her to marry him properly, to legitimize the past and make amends, but she had refused gently but firmly. Some things cannot be fixed or undone, only honored and respected, she said. Honor our daughter instead with your actions. Chief Adekunle did exactly that. He publicly named Amara his heir alongside Damilola, shocking the business community and wider world. More importantly, he changed from within. His wealth now served rather than dominated the community. His voice lifted the weak instead of crushing them beneath his power. Tunde had not returned to the village. Rumors said he lived in a distant city, bitter and diminished by his choices. The village rarely spoke of him anymore. Under the Iroko tree, where everything had begun that afternoon, Amara sometimes sat with students, teaching freely now what she once shared in dangerous secret. The tree's shade remained cool. The lessons remained patient, but now the world watched with appreciation instead of fear and suspicion. The old narrator's voice softens as the story returns to the present moment where it began. Amara stands beneath the Iroko tree, no longer the desperate girl in torn clothes, but a young woman whose eyes carry both sorrow and strength, and through suffering. Around her sit 20 children, rich and poor, quick and slow, confident and afraid, all learning together. She teaches them mathematics and reading, yes, but more importantly, she teaches them that worth is not measured by birth or wealth or circumstances. Damilola, now training to help run his father's businesses with compassion instead of exploitation and greed, often visits to share what he has learnt in the wider world. Folasade, grey-haired but clear-eyed most days, sometimes joins the lessons, her presence a reminder that healing is possible even after terrible breaking and loss. The Chief Adekunle, humbled but not destroyed by truth, works each day to prove that change can come even to those he believed beyond its reach or redemption. The village has not become perfect. Such places do not exist anywhere, but it has become possible, and possibility is the first seed of justice taking root. The narrator concludes with ancient wisdom. Remember this story when you see someone kneeling in the dust before you. Remember before you throw your stone or speak your judgment. Wisdom does not ask where you were born, or what you own, or who your parents were. It only asks what you choose to become with the life you are given. And sometimes, the child the world calls nothing becomes the mirror that shows the powerful their own poverty of spirit. The wind moves through the Iroko tree's branches, and somewhere in its whisper, you can hear the sound of children learning without fear or shame.